And we're back with the 65 AC50. In yesterday's video, I found and cured a ground reference problem that had been plaguing the amp for a couple of days. Seems like forever. And one of the commenters said, "Oh, I knew it was a grid." I'm like, well, yeah, it did sound like a grid problem where the grid was not biasing, but the grid in question is pin 2 of the phase inverter, and it has a 1 meg to ground, and so it did not measure with the scope as a, let's just say, a collapsing grid, where the tube is not biasing correctly. So it sounded like a grid issue. Wasn't technically a grid issue, but it was a loading of the preceding stage issue and clipping of the subsequent stage issue. But anyway, I digress. The issue that I just began to fix now is some additional heater noise in the circuit. And there are a lot of different causes of heater noise in amps. And, the blanket fix is just install DC heaters. That's not really viable to do except as a last resort in an AC50. I could do a DC elevated reference, which is less intrusive and is my fallback if I can't get it to work with the standard circuit. There is installing a heater balance pot, which I have, which addressed the uneven winding of the power transformer secondary. So that really took care of the bulk of it, but the remaining is just down to lead dress. The other way the heater noise can inject itself into a preamp is just lead dress, wire proximity. For instance, pin 7 here, this grid, was down along the chassis, being run down there. And by running it along the chassis, it was in parallel with this black heater wire, and it was in parallel with this white heater wire, and it picked up a bunch of noise. And I've elevated it up like this, and that has greatly reduced the buzz in the phase inverter. There's still some buzz in the phase inverter, so I'm about to elevate pin 2 as well, get that up away from the heater stuff, because that really matters. The proximity of a grid to the heater wire is not a good thing. In old fenders, you'd often find that heater wires going up in the air and everything run down along the chassis as far from the heaters as possible. In a lot of Marshalls, they have the heater wires run along the chassis, and you have to kind of move the grids away from them, and that can really work wonders in Marshalls. So here's the buzz with this grid wire in its stock configuration, this one lifted. Notice it dissipates as it comes out of standby. Believe it or not, that's a lot quieter than it was. I'm going to redo this one, and we'll check back. You can see this grid is now up in the air, as far away from down here as I can get it. And this heater wire has been looped farther away from this grid pin as well. Let's see if that made any difference. It takes a second to settle down after it comes out of standby. All right, that is better. I don't have a measurement to give you as to how much better. I'm just going off, my ears. Scopes are great, meters are great. You got to learn to trust your ears as well, and to know that you have poor aural memory. So you've got to double check your assumptions when it comes to those things from time to time. But in this case, it was a fresh experience. Now, I still have some heater buzz in this amp. So let me show you the next kind of clue that the amp presents. All right, so we have both channel volumes off. You can't see this one because the knob's not on there yet. Maybe I should temporarily install a knob, but nah. Anyway, on this channel, nothing's plugged in. As I turn it up, I hear white noise as it turns up, but I'm not hearing any buzz. On this channel, as I turn it up, you hear that? That's way below the volume of this when it was here. So we're getting buzz immediately. That tells me that the lead dress for this channel is better than the lead dress for this channel. Let's look and see where that is on the amp itself physically. Man, doing this series of videos with the amp chassis up on end has been hellacious from a filming perspective, in terms of the aspect ratio. Lots of negative space that I've got to account for in the frame. It's hard to fit everything in, but I don't want to turn the camera sideways and have everything in the background be topsy-turvy for you guys. The amp sits most naturally on the bench vertically, so here's what we have to work with. Anyway, the important thing is this connection to pin 7 is for the quieter treble channel, brilliant channel, And this input to pin 2 is the normal channel, which is noisier in this amp. And again, you can see here, there's this heater wire being run over here to pins 4 and 5, and it's right next to, in parallel with this wire, even though this wire is shielded. So in theory, getting this wire up and bringing it from this side away from the heater to bring over the gap would be better. Here's pin 9, the other heater connection, and so the quieter channel's grid connection is away from both heater wires. This is the issue here. Similarly, the noisier normal channel has its incoming signal here, even though it's shielded, going to pin 2, which again is right there parallel for a good length with that heater, whereas the input to the quieter brilliant channel is being run diagonally across the tube far from the heaters. In both cases, the second grid, pin 7, is away from the heaters because it's being run across the tube. So I need to move this wire, and I need to move this wire. And I'll report back after I've done that. All right, so this wire is now addressing the grid from this direction. Remember, the heater is here, and the heater wire that was interfering with this is over here. So this is as far as it can get. Same for this one. I also moved the brown heater wires as far away from the tube itself, because remember, the pin is right here, but that bit of metal, the pin connection, goes through the plastic or phenolic base. And if the grid's right there against it, it can still be very close. And the nice thing about all this is that moving something a relatively small amount to our eyes can have a drastic effect on the noise levels. You get inverse square things going on. So you move it a little bit and it goes down by half, move it a little bit more, it goes down by 10 times. So let's see where we're at now as I take it out standby. And remember, there will be an initial buzz that will dissipate. So what you first hear will not be the actual steady state. All right, that's better. All right, our control is the brilliant channel. And the one in question was the normal channel. It is better, but it still has a bit, so I need to play around with the lead dress a bit more. I'm going to come back to that for the purpose of this video, because that's tremendously better. And, like I said, just nudging things around an eighth of an inch or less sometimes is the silver bullet to get the rest of it out. Normally, you would expect the brilliant channel to have more noise because the higher frequency is being boosted. This brilliant channel is like ideal, and the normal channel is much improved, and I'll get it over the finish line after I stop recording this video. You'll see what the fix was if there's anything else in a later video. But first, let me turn your attention to the original output transformer, which has been reconnected and is not exhibiting any of the sounds which could have been arcing. Of course, the root cause was not the transformer, but that issue that the amp had before was playing havoc with this transformer. And now I've tested it as it is at very high gain, and I've not had any issues whatsoever. So I really think the transformer is going to be okay. And what we might have been hearing was just some loose laminations that were only really exhibiting themselves when there was something wrong in the signal coming in. Before I let you hear that, though, during my testing to diagnose that one issue of the cutting out, I had made some changes to this so that the 470 ohm resistors there were no longer in circuit, and the suppressor grid and the cathode were just at ground. And I want to put everything back to how it was, at least as far as the 47 ohms go and all that, and neaten up the lead dress, because this was a temporary thing in case I had to redo it. And the primary connections aren't as pretty as I like them to be either. And before this amp goes home, it will also have some flyback diodes installed, just cuz, but I'll only make some changes and I'll let you hear how the amp is sounding. Okay, everything reconnected as it was, though I still, have the suppressors going to ground rather than to the shared 47 ohm, well, it's not shared between the channels, but, instead of the 47 ohm that the actual cathode has. Now, in most YouTube videos, there's a narrative structure, a linear progression, And when you're working on an amp, you don't really always do that. You say, all right, I need to do X, but first I'm in this area, let me do Y. So I've got some noise, self-noise in the amp that's higher than I'd like. Right now I've got the tubes idling about 48% dissipation, about 25 milliamp. That's a pretty good place for this circuit to be. And I've got some hum in the output. Now, if I mute the output of the phase inverter, it totally goes silent. So I know that the push-pull pair is doing common mode cancellation. What you're seeing there on the scope is ripple at the reservoir cap, and I've got about 12 volts AC ripple present after the initial DC filtering. And that would be really loud and nasty through these output tubes if they weren't rejecting that common mode the common noise. So that's 12 volts there at the reservoir. I want to see what I've got at the screen. I should have quite a bit less at the screen. Yeah, a lot less. See how much smaller that is. Let's see what that is. About 1 volt at the screen node. And I'm just going to go through the amp and check some other nodes. So the screen node drops that down to 1 volt, 800 millivolts, and is much smoother, as you can tell. Look how smooth that is in comparison. And we're down to 54 millivolts. All the filter caps are doing their job, so that's not the cause of the hum. Let me disconnect the scope for a second. Let me unmute the phase inverter. So we're hearing that hum, and it's not heater buzz, and it's not ripple. So in a way, it's a shame, because those are things that are pretty easy to fix. You say, oh, I've got a bad filter cap, or oh, I've got bad lead dress, as we've discussed, or we've got a bad imbalance there. It's none of those things. Now, in fairness, I'm being very finicky based on other amps that I have worked on. It has a higher noise floor than I prefer. The existing noise floor is really far below the signal level. So when I play this for you and the mic is set up for the guitar, this hum will be so far in the background that it won't be audible. And there are a lot of vintage Voxes, AC30s especially, that have about this level. Now, I could increase the filtering still more. I mean, this has fairly minimal filtering, but that's part of the sound. I'm not going to sacrifice the behavior, the good part of the amp, just to get some theoretical ideal lack of hum. All right, I've been bashing away with the 335 past couple of videos. Let's go to the Strat for this one. Well, I say the Strat, the Springfield, the K-Line Springfield. The app sounded pretty good, and yeah, I can hear the self-noise in the room, but on stage, once you start playing, that all goes away. And with the exact same settings, if I go to the 335, So I'm going to keep chipping away at the stone, see if I can get this quieter. But the amp is in such a better place than it has been to date that I'm feeling really confident, and I'm really glad to say that the original output transformer, while it did not like the previous operating conditions one bit, seems to have survived the ordeal, though I'm going to let this amp run with a loop and a dummy load for many, many hours before I declare it 100% healthy. I want to make sure I've not missed anything crucial in that regard. Also, as far as the noise goes, there's just no shielding on two planes. There's only so much you can do. Anyway, this is a good video. This is a happy video. This is a bunch of good news packed into one, even though some of it's kind of esoteric, maybe hard to understand. It's so nice when the nightmare ends and we're back into little bitty tweaks to get it just right, like an MLT when the tomato's nice and fresh. Thanks for watching.